Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about the face of head and neck topic. The facial muscles are actually subcutaneous muscles, and you all know that the facial muscles actually causes facial expression. Why? Because these facial muscles are actually inserted into the skin, so therefore these muscles of the face are secondarily known as the muscle of the facial expression, because they bring out facial expression as well. Now embryologically, these muscles of the face are derived from the second brachial arch and the mesoderm of the second brachial arch, and therefore they are supplied by the facial nerve. Now if we talk about the morphological importance of it is that they represent the best remnants of the panniculus carnosus. What is panniculus carnosus? It is a continuous subcutaneous muscle sheet which is seen in some animals, and all of them are inserted into the skin only. That's why they bring out the facial expressions. If we talk about topographical importance, the muscles of the face are mainly grouped under following 6 headings, that is the muscle of the scalp, muscle of the auricle, muscle of the eyelids, muscles of the nose, muscle around the mouth, and the muscle of the neck. We'll talk about all these things in this diagram. Okay, now first is the muscle of the scalp. As you can see, this is the muscle of the scalp, that is the occipitofrontalis muscle. I have discussed about this muscle in the scalp video of mine. In this I have told you that the origin of these two muscles are actually different, while the insertion of these two muscles are the same, that is the galea aponeurotica or the epicadian aponeurosis. They are originated from the occipitalis is originated from the mainly superior knuckle line, and the frontalis muscle originates from the skin on the eyelids and the forehead and corrugator supercilii orbicularis oculi muscle. Okay, now the muscles of the eyelid or the orbital opening. Now we have mainly two muscles over here, a corrugator supercilii and the orbicularis oculi. Just locate this. This is the corrugator supercilii and this is the orbicularis oculi. Corrugator supercilii is mainly used when it mainly forms the vertical lines in the forehead, as in frowning. Whatever lines you see on your forehead is mainly because of the corrugator supercilii muscle. But the orbicularis oculi muscle has mainly 3 further parts of it, that is the orbital part over here, palpebral part over here, and lacrimal part lateral and deep to the lacrimal sac. Okay, we'll talk about the lacrimal sac in the lacrimal apparatus in my lacrimal apparatus video. Now the function of the orbital part of the orbicularis oculi muscle is that it mainly protects the eye from the bright light, wind and air. It mainly causes the forceful closure of the eyelids. So that's why whenever something is about to hit your eye, your eyelids close by its own involuntarily. Okay. Now the palpebral part of the orbicularis oculi mainly closes the lids gently, as in blinking and sleeping. It can be voluntary, it can be involuntary. And the lacrimal part actually dilates the lacrimal sac for sucking of the lacrimal fluid. Lacrimal fluid is nothing but the tears into the sac, directs the lacrimal puncta into the lacus lacrimalis, supports the lower lid. Now the muscles around the nasal opening, or we can say the muscles of the nose. We have mainly 4 muscles over here, that is the procerus over here, compressor naris, dilator naris, and the depressor septi. Now this procerus muscle actually causes the transverse wrinkles on your nose, the compressor naris. Okay, it actually causes the nasal aperture to compress, as the name says compressor naris, so it will actually causes the nasal aperture, means this portion inside is the nasal aperture inside the nose, so it actually causes the nasal aperture to compress. Dilator naris, as the name says dilated, that means it will dilate the nasal aperture. As the compressor naris compresses, dilator naris will dilate. And the depressor septi, as the name says depressor, so it will depress. Okay, so it will pull the nose inferiorly. Now one more thing of the eyelids is that it has one more muscle which is not actually perfectly ocular, but it is extraocular muscle, that is the LPS, levator palpebrae superioris. This is an extraocular muscle which is supplied by sympathetic fibers and the third cranial nerve. Okay, now the muscles around the lips. So just in order to remember the action of particular muscle, just remember its location. So you will able to get a rough idea that what action it can do. So here we have orbicularis oris muscle. Okay, don't confuse between orbicularis oculi and orbicularis oris. Oculi is for the eyes and oris is for the mouth. So orbicularis oris has mainly two parts, intrinsic part and the extrinsic part. Now this muscle mainly closes the lips and protrudes lips. Now the buccinator muscle, this is the main muscle of the cheek over here. Now this muscle is actually pierced by two things, remember, parotid duct and buccal branch of mandibular nerve. Remember, it is mainly pierced by two things, parotid duct and the buccal branch of mandibular nerve. Now this muscle is actually flattens the cheek against the gums and teeth and prevents the accumulation of the food in the vestibule. Now what is vestibule? Vestibule is the space between your lips, the lower lip or the upper lip, and your teeth. That particular space is known as the vestibule. So it actually flattens the cheek against the gums and teeth and prevents the accumulation of food in the vestibule. Now this muscle is also known as the whistling muscle because it actually helps to make the shape of the mouth in the whistling shape, means you are able to whistle because of this muscle. We'll talk about common facial expression and the muscles that produce a common facial expression in detail in this video only later. Now next is the levator labii superioris alachnasi. This is over here. This actually lifts the upper lips and dilates the nostril. Now the zygomaticus major and the zygomaticus minor. Zygomaticus major actually pulls the angle upward and laterally as in smiling. So while you are smiling, your zygomaticus major is working, and the zygomaticus minor actually elevates the upper lips. Now the levator labii superioris, it actually elevates the upper lips, forms the nasolabial groove. Levator anguli oris, it elevates the angle of the mouth, forms the nasolabial groove. Just remember, levator labii superioris over here, and the levator labii superioris, it elevates the upper lip, forms a nasolabial groove, and the levator anguli oris, it elevates the angle of the mouth, forms a nasolabial groove. So in short, these both LLS and the LAO, they both elevate the upper lip, they both forms a nasolabial groove, but the elevation is different. Now the depressor anguli oris, it actually draws the angle of the mouth downward and laterally. So we can say that it actually draws the angle of the mouth down. Depressor labii inferioris, it draws the lower lip downward. Mentalis over here, it elevates and protrudes lower lips as it wrinkles skin on chin. And the rizoris over here, because as you can see over here, the mentalis is present on the chin. So it will elevate and protrude the lower lip as it wrinkles the skin of the chin. So it mainly wrinkles the skin of the chin. By the means of that, it elevates and protrudes the lower lips. Now the risorius, it retracts the angle of the mouth. Now last is the muscle of the neck. It is only one muscle, that is the platysma. It mainly pulls the angle of the mouth downward as in horror or fright. Now let's talk about the common facial expression and the muscle involved in it. These type of questions are mainly asked in the Viva and 1 marker, so this is very important, so understand it well. Now over here first is the surprise. Okay, in this the frontalis muscles of yours, this one actually is in main action, the frontalis muscle. Okay, as in surprise, or actually this part is mainly in function. Now in dislike, as you can see, this man, okay, is having an expression of dislike. Over here what changes you can see? Over here there is vertical lines in the forehead as in frowning, okay, and around the nose there is transverse wrinkles. So these both things are actually caused by two muscles, vertical lines on the forehead by the corrugator supercilii, and the transverse wrinkles or the transverse lines over here around the nose is caused by the procerus muscle, this muscle. So in dislike two muscles are used, that means the corrugator supercilii and the procerus. In anger, as you can see, this portion, the nose part, is actually the expression is mainly of the nose, and over here as you can see two main thing occurs. This the nasal aperture of this man is actually dilated and the nose is pulled inferiorly. As you can see, his nose is pulled inferiorly. So two muscles over here will act, dilator nares muscle, this, and the depressor septi. Okay, these both muscle actually helps in dilation of the nasal aperture and the nose is pulled inferiorly. Now the smile or laugh. In smile or laugh, mainly the zygomaticus major actually is an action because this muscle actually pulls the angle of the mouth upward and laterally as in smiling process. This is the zygomaticus major muscle. Okay, now in the grinning facial expression, mainly the angle of the mouth is retracted. So this is mainly done by the muscle risorius over here. This is risorius, so this will cause retraction of the angle of the mouth. Okay, now in sadness, mainly two muscles act, levator labii superioris over here and the levator anguli oris. Okay, now the levator labii superioris actually elevates the upper lips and the levator anguli oris actually elevates the angle of the mouth. But now you might be thinking that in the sadness the angle of the mouth goes downwards. Okay, but this not happens actually. What happens is the location of the muscles are over here. So the location and the attachment of them with the other muscle actually causes the downward movement or the sadness expression of the human beings. So two muscles, levator labii superioris and levator anguli oris, causes the elevation of the upper lips and elevates the angle of the mouth. So sadness facial expression is seen. Just remember, in grief, depressor anguli oris mainly occurs because it draws the angle of the mouth downward and laterally. Okay, now in the sadness, mainly two muscles act, that is the levator labii superioris over here and the levator anguli oris. And in the grief, mainly one muscle acts, that is the depressor anguli oris, which draws the angle of the mouth down and laterally. Now the whistling or kissing facial expression over here, as I told you before, the buccinator is the main muscle of whistling. Along with the buccinator, there is one more muscle, that is the orbicularis oris. This muscle actually causes the closure of the lips and protruding out of the lips. So it will cause the whistling facial expression. So means buccinator and the orbicularis oris muscle. Now in doubting, the main muscle over here acting is the mentalis muscle of the chin, which actually causes the wrinkling of the skin of the chin. Now in horror, fright and terror, as you can see, mainly the platysma muscle acts. Okay, now you can imagine that when you are frightened, your neck is actually, you can see the vertical lines on your neck. Okay, these are all because of the platysma muscle. So in horror, fright or terror, the main muscle platysma acts. Okay, now the nerve supply of the face. The facial muscles are mainly supplied by the facial nerve. Now as I told you before that facial muscles are developed from the mesoderm of the second brachial arch, so therefore they are supplied by the facial nerve. Facial nerve is actually the motor nerve of the face and it has mainly 5 terminal branches, that is the temporalis, zygomatic, buccal, marginal mandibular and the cervical. Buccal branch are further divided into 2 branches, upper buccal and the lower buccal. Now temporalis facial nerve supplies the frontalis muscle, auricular muscles and the orbicularis oculi muscle. Zygomatic supplies orbicularis oculi muscle. Buccal, just remember that the buccal supplies the upper lip while the marginal mandibular supplies the lower lip. Buccal supplies the upper lip, as you can see it is present in the upper lips. Okay, while the marginal mandibular supplies the lower lips, and buccal also supplies the cheeks. Okay, and it is a main muscle for whistling, I told you before. Then the cervical mainly supplies the platysma, that means the neck portion. Now the branches of the facial nerve can be simulated by putting your right wrist on the right ear and spreading the 5 digits, the thumb over the temporal region, the index finger on the zygomatic bone, middle finger on the upper lip, the ring finger on the lower lip and the little finger over the neck. So it will, the position of the finger will actually show the position of the particular terminal branch of the facial nerve. Now the facial nerve supplied the motor section of the face, while the sensory nerve supply of the face is the facial muscles is the trigeminal nerve. The skin over the angle of the jaw and over the parotid gland is supplied by the greater auricular nerve. So this was all about the facial muscles, their actions, facial expression, nerve supply. So hope you understood well. Thank you so much.